You. Yes, you. Take a look at your hands. A long, hard look at your hands. First off, make sure you are washing them because organisms travel. But second, compare your fingers to others. Do any of them look the same? If they do, take a closer look. Actually, don't. That's hard to do. By now, you should have the idea that your fingerprints are different than your neighbors or anyone else. I would go into specifics about the 3 different types or that there are minutiae that define your fingerprint even more, but I am here to tell you the history of the fingerprint. How did the fingerprint become one of the most used forms of identification? The original form of identification was created in 1882 by Alphonse Bertillon, a French anthropologist. Bertillon created a formula that takes the measurements of a person's body parts and records them onto a card. This form of identification became known as, wait for it, the Bertillon formula. In 1891, Juan Vucetich initiated the fingerprinting of criminals. The first time that this was used was in the 1892 Rajas homicide in Argentina. The Rajas homicide was when Francisca Rajas was found wounded along with her 2 children. By the time that they were discovered, the 2 children had unfortunately succumbed to their injuries. Rajas claimed that they had been attacked by a neighbor. When investigators arrested and interrogated the neighbor, they said that they were with friends. Police were now stunned and sent investigator Eduardo Alvarez. Alvarez found a bloody fingerprint on the bedroom door. Working alongside with Juan Vucetich, police force learned that the fingerprint did not belong to the neighbor, but to Francisca Rajas. Rajas then admitted to the murder. The motive was that she wanted to be with a suitor, but the suitor did not want the children. She was sentenced to life in prison. Thank you, Vucetich, for your new method. At the same time that Rajas was murdering her children, Sir Francis Galton, a British anthropologist, publishes the first book on fingerprinting. Sir Galton mentions the uniqueness and individuality of each fingerprint. These differences are known as minutiae, or also as Galton's details. Are all researchers narcissistic? Speaking of narcissists, do you remember this guy? He's back. Ish. In 1903, the William Will West case occurred. In Leavenworth, Kansas, at the federal prison, a man named Will West became one of the inmates. After taking his Bertillon measurements and getting it processed, officers quickly noticed that Will West had the same exact measurements as another inmate with the name of William West. What made matters worse, the 2 men looked very similar to each other. This caused the Bertillon measurements to become questioned on accuracy. They now needed a new identification system that positively identified convicts. Enter the fingerprint. As the Bertillon measurements declined, the use of the fingerprint increased. By 1905, the United States military and the police force adopted the use of fingerprints. 1908 was the first official fingerprint card to be released. The first person to be convicted based off of fingerprint evidence in the United States was Thomas Jennings in 1911. Thomas Jennings was in the house of Clarence B. Hiller. In the middle of the night, Mrs. Hiller had woken up and noticed that a gas light that they kept on was no longer lit. Mr. Hiller went to investigate and noticed the intruder, Thomas Jennings. Jennings and Hiller struggled and toppled down the stairs. Hiller was shot twice and died a few moments later. Jennings fled, but was arrested when asked what he was doing out so late at night. Jennings was just recently released for parole, so they checked the fingerprint card with the fingerprints that they were lifted off of the Hiller's home. 4 experts gave testimony on how the card and the lifts were identical. Jennings was convicted of murder. Jennings appealed to the Illinois Supreme Court, saying that the only evidence that they had was fingerprints. In People v. Jennings, the Illinois Supreme Court said that the fingerprints have been known to work and cited the multiple historical events that occurred with the development of the science. Jennings was then executed due to a standing conviction. Fingerprinting has come a long way. Last year has evolved the way forensic scientists lift fingerprints. There is a fluorescent fingerprint powder called FP Natural. FP Natural enables investigators to reveal high-contrast fingerprint marks while suppressing background interferences. By using an infrared camera, the powder gives off a light that helps see the prints on harder backgrounds, such as aluminum, juice boxes, gift wraps, and bin liner. This technique is only going to grow. So now you must think to yourself, will I use my hands to help society, or will I leave behind a mark that puts me behind bars?